The courtroom was packed before the clock struck 9, not just filled, packed. Elbow-to-elbow tension, thick in the air like smoke before a fire. Reporters scribbled in frantic shorthand, their lenses twitching to catch every twitch, every micro-expression. This wasn't just another legal proceeding. This was spectacle, judgment, and televised reckoning rolled into one. And then the doors opened. Donald J. Trump entered like a man still convinced he owned the building. His jaw set tight, tie knotted with ceremonial aggression. The smirk was there, the practiced one, the one calibrated for campaign trail flashbulbs. He didn't glance at the gallery. He didn't need to. This was supposed to be his victory lap. 3 years of headlines, 5 separate investigations, and still he stood, untouchable, unyielding. Or so it seemed. To his left, flanking him like sentinels, sat 2 of his attorneys, faces tight, chins lifted, pretending the walls weren't closing in. Behind him, a shadow, his son stiff-backed, eyes darting. No Melania. Again. But the cameras didn't linger on them. No, they pivoted to the far end of the bench, where a single woman sat, still and silent, her posture measured like a loaded spring. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She hadn't spoken yet. She hadn't moved. But her presence was unmistakable. Dressed in sharp navy, hands folded neatly atop a manila folder, she looked more like an executioner than a legislator, and Trump saw it. Oh, he saw it. A flicker in his gaze, recognition of a threat that didn't come with subpoenas or sirens, but with truth. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Gavel struck. Today's proceedings will determine the final rebuttal phase, the judge announced. And by request from the Oversight Committee, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett will be given the floor. Trump's eyes narrowed. That wasn't the plan. His team hadn't prepped for her, but the court had, because the final word was about to become the first nail. The courtroom didn't breathe for a full 3 seconds. Then came the buzz, a collective inhalation of shock, curiosity, dread. Crockett stood slow and deliberate. The heels of her shoes echoed like a metronome of intent on the polished floor. She didn't speak right away. She didn't have to. The silence did the talking. Trump leaned forward slightly, squinting, as if trying to read a teleprompter that wasn't there. Crockett finally looked up. "Your Honor, I will speak only once today. I won't waste time on theatrics. This isn't about scoring points. This is about the one question that has never been answered, and the silence behind it." A murmur stirred. The judge nodded curtly. Permission granted. She turned, slowly, to face Trump. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice like silk pressed against steel, "you've stood before this court more times than any modern president. You've claimed persecution. You've cried hoax. You've paraded loyalty like a badge. But today, I'm not interested in what you say." She stepped closer to the witness podium. "I'm interested in what she doesn't." Trump shifted. His shoulders rolled, ever so slightly. He knew exactly where this was going, and didn't like the route. "The First Lady," Crockett said, "or the former First Lady. She hasn't stood beside you in a courtroom. She hasn't campaigned. She hasn't tweeted. She hasn't even issued a statement." She looked down at the folder, opened it, slowly. "Melania Trump has missed 27 public appearances tied to your defense or re-election efforts. That includes 6 court hearings, 4 campaign launches, and 5 major fundraising events." Trump's lawyer stood. "Objection." "Overruled," the judge barked. Faster than expected. Crockett didn't flinch. She continued. "We have footage of you on national television declaring, quote, 'Melania supports me more than anyone in the world, and yet every time you fight for your image, she vanishes.'" The room tensed. "And then—" Crockett dropped it. "America isn't wondering if you're guilty, sir. They're wondering why the one person who knows you best no longer shows up." Trump didn't answer, not yet, but the twitch in his temple, the sudden tightening of his jaw. Those said plenty, and Crockett smiled just slightly, closing the folder. This isn't just a legal proceeding, Mr. Trump. It's a referendum on your character, and apparently your closest confidant has already cast her vote. The courtroom didn't clap. It didn't need to. The silence was loud enough, and Trump, for the first time that day, blinked first. She didn't sit back down. The judge hadn't dismissed her, and Crockett knew the power of posture. She remained standing, hands folded, eyes on Trump, like a scientist observing something volatile in a sealed container. Across the courtroom, the mood had shifted. Even the reporters had stopped typing. They were watching now, not as journalists, but as witnesses. Trump adjusted his tie, then adjusted it again. A reflex, a stall. He spoke first, low and calculated. "You don't know anything about my family," he muttered. "You don't know her." Crockett tilted her head ever so slightly. "I don't need to," she said coolly. "I just follow her absence." The judge gave a subtle nod. She had the floor. Crockett turned, facing the jury box. Even though no verdict was being rendered today, it didn't matter. The real jury was watching from living rooms across the country. She held up a stack of papers. "These are transcripts, official event schedules, public White House calendars, every one of them documenting a moment when the former First Lady was expected to appear and didn't." She paused. Some absences were explained: illness, travel, security concerns. But most, she held them up. Let the papers flutter. No excuse, no statement, no reason, just silence. Trump opened his mouth, but Crockett didn't give him the oxygen. "She skipped your campaign relaunch. She skipped your court hearings in New York, Georgia, D.C. She skipped every rally where you said, quote, 'She'll be here next time.'" The audience stirred. She wasn't. Trump let out a breath through his nose, sharp and defensive. "She's private," he said, voice raised. "She doesn't like the cameras." Crockett smiled faintly, the way one does when they know the rebuttal has already been baked into the strategy. "Is that why she was photographed at the Breakers in Palm Beach last week, dining with Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez?" Trump blinked. The courtroom exhaled collectively. "That photo," Crockett continued, "was taken the same night you were indicted. Again." Trump sat back, stiff. His lawyer leaned in to whisper, but he didn't respond. His fingers tapped the table, not in rhythm, in panic. "She had a seat at that table," Crockett said softly, "but not in this courtroom." The judge didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. The silence that filled the room was surgical, not a void, but a scalpel. Crockett lowered the photo gently onto the evidence projector. The image illuminated the screen behind her. Crystal clear, Melania Trump smiling faintly, glass of wine in hand, mid-conversation with a billionaire and his girlfriend. "Taken 8:17 p.m., she said, tapping the timestamp. 2 hours after your indictment was unsealed." Trump leaned forward slightly, then back, his arms folded, defensive posture. "Coincidence?" she asked, as if to the room, not just him. "Maybe. But coincidences tend to stop stacking after the 20th time." She turned off the projector and walked a slow arc across the courtroom. "I'm not here to speculate on your marriage," she said. "That's not the point. The point is this. You've asked America to trust you, to believe you, follow you, vote for you. And yet, the one person who vowed to stand beside you hasn't even stood in the same zip code." Trump scoffed, loud, forced. "She's focused on Barron." Crockett nodded, acknowledging the lifeline. "She's a mother. That matters, but so does timing. So does distance. So does intentionality." She moved back to the center. "She was present during your campaign in 2016. Present during the press tours. Present when it made sense for your brand. But now, when the walls are closing in, she's gone." Trump sat forward. "She supports me privately. That's what matters." Crockett didn't flinch. "Then let's test that," she said. She opened another folder, slow, deliberate. "I have here a list of declined appearances, invitations sent directly from your own campaign office." She began reading. "April 6th, Campaign Dinner, Texas, declined. May 9th, Fox News Family Special, declined. June 17th, Courtroom Support Request, no response." She paused. "And finally, July 12th, a private request to attend your birthday fundraiser in Bedminster." Her eyes lifted. Her exact words, per the email leak from Jason Miller, were, "He's not my cause anymore." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Trump's jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists against the table. His lawyer whispered something urgent. Still no response. Crockett delivered the closing line of the chapter, soft but lethal. "She's not absent, Mr. Trump. She's deliberate. There's a difference." The room didn't move, and for the first time in the hearing, Donald Trump had no comeback. The door creaked open near the back of the courtroom. At first, no one paid attention, just another observer, maybe a late-entry journalist or staffer. But then the whispering began. First row. Second. Third. Like a wave rolling forward, picking up speed, eyes turned, phones subtly raised. Reporters stiffened in their seats. Anthony Scaramucci had arrived, uninvited, unannounced, but not unexpected. The man who once called Trump a genius and later a liability in a suit now took his seat quietly in the audience gallery, not beside Trump, nowhere near him, just close enough to see everything. Crockett didn't acknowledge him, not yet. She simply turned a page in her folder, calm as ever. "I'd like to submit testimony," she said, her tone casual, "from a source who knows the dynamics of this inner circle better than most." Trump's lawyer stood up instantly. "Objection!" But the judge waved him down. "Congresswoman, proceed." Crockett nodded. Exhibit 19, a sworn statement collected under congressional oversight. Text messages dated 2 weeks prior to the first indictment. She handed the documents to the clerk, who passed them to the judge, and then displayed them on the screen for the gallery to see. At the top of the page, sender, Melania, Trump. Recipient, legal counsel, name redacted, message, "Tell Jason Miller I'm not attending anything that looks like a funeral before it's necessary." Trump jerked his head toward the screen. The courtroom buzzed. "That text," Crockett said, "was sent the morning your campaign team invited her to your first arraignment in New York. Her response wasn't confusion, it was clarity." Trump raised a hand, trying to speak. "This is garbage, fabricated. No one verifies." A voice cut through the air. "Actually, Don, I did." Gasps fluttered through the gallery. Scaramucci stood, smoothing the sleeves of his navy suit. "I verified it because I was in the room when she sent it." The judge glanced at him but said nothing. He didn't have to. Trump's face contorted, lips parting as if to throw fire, but Scaramucci continued before he could. "She had her phone in one hand," he said, "an espresso in the other. She looked at the invite, laughed, and said, quote, 'They still think I'm part of this.'" A sharp inhale from someone in the gallery. Someone else whispered, "Damn." Trump slammed his hand against the table, not loud enough to stop the room, but enough to betray the nerves beneath. Crockett turned, finally locking eyes with Scaramucci. "Mr. Scaramucci," she said, "would you be willing to confirm this statement on the record?" Scaramucci smirked, leaning against the barrier. "Gladly. Because if there's one thing Melania knows how to do, it's disappear when the cameras are rolling." Trump stood halfway. His lawyer grabbed his arm, pulling him back down. It was too late. The cracks were showing. And the audience? They were no longer watching a trial. They were watching a collapse. Everything was different now. The silence that once hovered over the courtroom had shifted into something volatile. Not anticipation, but pressure. The kind that builds behind a dam before the final break. Crockett stood at the center of it all, poised, unreadable. Trump, once the storm in every room, was now the eye of one. Still, tense, red-faced, and seething, just beneath the surface. "Let's continue," Crockett said, barely above a whisper. She returned to the folder, her fingertips barely grazing the edges of the paper as she slid another sheet into view on the projector. "Video evidence, footage compiled from your campaign rallies, Mr. Trump. Specifically, every time you claimed the First Lady would be joining you." The first clip played. Trump on stage, grinning. "Melania sends her love. She'll be with us next week in Michigan." The screen jumped to a second clip. "She's resting up, folks, but next time she'll be right here, believe me." And another. "She's just camera shy, but next rally? Definitely, absolutely." Then the screen froze. A list appeared. Every date, every location, every event. Attendance. Absent, absent, absent. Trump groaned. "I'm not dragging my wife into this circus," he muttered. "She doesn't deserve this." Crockett cut in, voice like velvet wrapped around a dagger. "Then why did you build the tent around her name?" He looked up. "You used her image in your fundraising emails. Her photo appears on your official campaign site. Your PAC ran ads featuring her voiceover. And yet she hasn't spoken publicly on your behalf in nearly 2 years." Crockett moved closer. "You say she supports you privately. That's not what America sees. What they see is someone who used to stand beside you and now won't even share a stage." Trump shifted in his chair, a bead of sweat catching light on his temple. Scaramucci leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. "She's not just off the campaign," he said loudly enough to be heard. "She's off the map." Crockett stepped to the center of the room. "Mr. Trump," she said slowly, "this courtroom isn't just watching your legal strategy. They're watching your human one. And from what we've seen," she gestured toward the gallery, "your political machine is running without its co-pilot. And that's not just optics, that's abandonment in high definition." Trump said nothing. Because what could he say? His silence wasn't just defensive anymore. It was admission. Crockett let the silence stretch. She didn't rush the moment. She let it breathe. Let the weight of the last statement settle across the courtroom like thick smoke. Then calmly she reached into her folder and pulled out a sleek, glossy envelope. "Let's shift from absence," she said, "to intent." She placed the envelope on the evidence stand and tapped it once. Sharp, deliberate. "This is a copy of a non-disclosure release agreement filed by LCB Publishing, a subsidiary of Amazon Studios." Trump squinted, leaned in slightly. The name meant nothing to him yet. Crockett continued. "This document, authenticated and time-stamped, shows that Melania Trump, your wife, is no longer bound by any NDA pertaining to your marriage, your presidency, or your campaign operations." Gasps, real ones this time. She let the room react. "She signed this release 4 weeks ago, quietly. No press conference, no leak, just a clean, silent exit from the one contract more sacred than her marriage vows, her silence." Trump's mouth twitched. His hand hovered over the table, searching for something to grab. "She did this," Crockett said softly, "because she doesn't intend to stay quiet anymore." Scaramucci raised an eyebrow in the gallery, whispering under his breath, "Here it comes." Crockett stepped forward. 3 days after that NDA was dissolved, a confidential media package was delivered to Amazon Studios and HBO Max. Title, The Other Side of the Room, a First Lady's Memoir. The courtroom froze. "It's not a book," Crockett added. "It's a series, 6 parts, signed by Melania herself, executive produced by none other than Brett Ratner." Trump stood up this time, fully. "Objection!" he roared, despite not being the attorney. The judge didn't respond, because the courtroom was no longer under his control. Crockett remained still, voice steady. You've claimed she's private. She is. But private doesn't mean silent. It means selective. And she's chosen the platform where she can finally speak without interruption, without loyalty, without you. Trump's jaw opened, then closed again. She's not leaving the conversation, Mr. Trump. She's rewriting it. She turned to the gallery, speaking louder now. And that's what makes this moment historic. Because for the first time since this saga began, the most powerful message wasn't shouted from a podium. She pointed at the envelope. It was signed at the bottom of a contract. Trump didn't sit back down. He stood at the table like a man who'd just been told his fortune and didn't like what he saw in the cards. "That's fake," he barked. "That's not real. She would never do that without telling me." His voice cracked. The gallery watched, unblinking. Crockett folded her hands calmly. "She didn't need to tell you, Mr. Trump. She already told the world." Scaramucci stood now too, not to testify, not to interrupt, but to bear witness. His voice was calm, even smug. "I warned you," he said. "When loyalty is transactional, don't be surprised when the receipts get mailed to someone else." Trump spun toward him. "You're a traitor," he hissed. "You're a washed-up fraud who got tossed out faster than you could cash a check." Scaramucci shrugged. "And yet somehow I still know more about your wife's schedule than you do." The courtroom buzzed again. Low murmurs, heads shaking in disbelief. Trump pounded the table. "I'm the one under fire here," he snapped. "And she knows what this is. She knows it's a witch hunt. She supports me. She's just staying out of the spotlight for the kid." Crockett stepped in gently. "No, sir. She's staying out of your spotlight." He froze. "She's not protecting Barron. She's protecting herself. Her silence was never about privacy. It was strategy. And now it's become message. And you, Mr. Trump, are no longer part of the delivery." He stumbled a half-step back, mouth agape. "You all want to crucify me in public," he growled. "You want to destroy me so you can put your puppets on the podium. That's what this is about." Crockett narrowed her gaze, voice like steel drawn from velvet. "No, Mr. Trump. This isn't about replacement. It's about reflection. And unfortunately for you, your reflection has stopped looking back." Trump stood silent, just for a moment. And then, like a man who'd heard one too many truths to bear, he snapped. "You don't get to ask these questions," he screamed. "You're nobody, you're nothing, you're just jealous because you'll never know what power feels like." Crockett raised an eyebrow. "I don't need power," she replied. "I just need clarity." Then she took a breath and asked the question that would end everything. But that part, that comes next, because the walkout hadn't happened yet. But in that moment, every viewer, every spectator, every breath in that courtroom knew it was coming. The courtroom wasn't just still, it was suspended, like a held breath across a nation watching live. Crockett stepped forward, slow and unshaken. Her hands rested lightly on the edge of the podium, but her voice held all the weight in the room. "Mr. Trump," she said, calm but resolute, "you've claimed Melania supports you. In silence, in private, in principle." He didn't answer. He just stared, jaw clenched, body rigid, eyes darting like he was calculating a way out with no exit sign in sight. Crockett continued, "You've said she's withdrawn for the sake of your son, for dignity, for protection." Another pause. She let the stillness grow teeth. "And yet, I have here," she lifted a single page, "a verified relocation document, dated 2 weeks ago, signed by your wife, filed through a private legal representative in Palm Beach." She lowered the page slowly, deliberately. "Effective immediately, Melania Trump has moved out of Mar-a-Lago." The room exhaled as one. She's not staying at the residence. Not in the guest wing. Not even on the grounds. Crockett's eyes met Trump's directly. She left. Trump's fingers curled into the sides of the table. His face went slack for a beat. Then rage crept in. She needed space, he blurted, voice cracking at the edges. That doesn't mean anything. She still loves me. Crockett's voice sliced through the eruption like a scalpel. Then why, she asked softly, did her legal team file a clause stating she would not return under any political conditions, not even in the event of re-election? Trump's mouth dropped open. His lawyer reached out, touched his shoulder, trying to anchor him back to the chair. It didn't work. She's doing this for optics, Trump shouted. She's been manipulated. You people don't understand how marriage works. You don't understand loyalty. Crockett didn't blink. Mr. Trump, she said, if the person who knows every corner of your private life refuses to stand beside you in public, what does that tell the American people? Then she dropped it. The question, the one that shattered the illusion. If Melania still believes in you, why has she already moved out before the verdict came in? A flash of something in Trump's eyes. Not anger, not even fear. Shame. And then it happened. He slammed his hands on the table, chair screeching backward, echoing off the courtroom walls. I'm done, he snarled. He turned, knocking over a water glass, ignoring the camera flashes, the gasps, the judge calling after him. Donald J. Trump stormed out of the courtroom, red-faced, breath short, shoulders rigid. The crowd didn't move. No one followed. Even the bailiff froze. Crockett stood still. The storm had passed, and it had left only silence in its wake. The door slammed behind him. Not softly, not discreetly. It echoed through the chamber like the final gavel strike in a trial the public hadn't realized they were watching all along. Scaramucci exhaled, folded his arms, and muttered just loud enough for a hot mic to catch. And that's what walking out of your own legacy looks like. The courtroom stayed still. The judge cleared his throat, mumbled something procedural. The attorneys conferred nervously, unsure whether to continue or call it. But everyone already knew the real trial was over, because this one wasn't about statutes, it was about symbolism, and the message had been delivered, not by Crockett's words, but by Trump's exit. Media reaction was instant. The footage spread like wildfire. Trump storms out of court after question from Crockett leaves him speechless. Storm out trended within minutes. If she believed trended an hour later. MSNBC reran the walkout clip 17 times before midnight. Fox News tried to spin it as a strategic withdrawal, but even their panel looked unconvinced. Gutfeld made a joke. No one laughed. On TikTok, Gen Z made it a meme. Split screen, Melania sipping tea, Trump yelling at a camera. Caption, when she moves out before the indictment hits. Inside GOP donor circles, a tremor ran through every closed-door meeting. One bundler canceled a fundraising dinner. Another paused all digital ad buys. No one said it aloud, but they all knew you can't lead a movement if your own household opts out. And Crockett? She didn't claim victory. She didn't hold a press conference. She simply exited the courtroom with the same deliberate calm she entered it with. A single reporter caught her at the door, asked, "Congresswoman, what do you think just happened in there?" She paused for only a second, then answered, "Truth walked in, lies walked out," and then she was gone. No entourage, no noise. Because she didn't need to shout. She had let the question speak for her. As for Trump, he was last seen entering a black SUV outside the courthouse. No cameras, no family, no statement. Just a man alone, not because the world had turned against him, but because the people closest to him had already walked away. Final shot. The screen fades to black. One final line appears, stark white on a silent screen. Sometimes the question doesn't need an answer. The silence that follows is enough.